The wedding reception was in full swing. Soft golden lights hung from the ceiling of the hotel ballroom, casting a warm glow over the guests. Emma stood by the bar, watching her college friends dance. She smoothed down her blue silk dress and took another sip of champagne. 5 years after graduation, they were all starting to pair off and settle down. "You look like you could use some company." Emma turned to see Jack, her best friend since freshman year. He looked different tonight in his well-fitted suit, his dark hair neatly combed back instead of in its usual messy style. "I was wondering when you'd rescue me from these romantic festivities," Emma said with a smile. "Everyone's either making out or making wedding plans." Jack laughed. "Well, that's what happens when your friends start growing up." He held out his hand. "Dance with me?" "As friends, of course." "Of course," Emma repeated, taking his hand. They moved to the dance floor just as the band switched to a slow song. Jack placed his hand gently on Emma's waist, keeping a respectful distance between them as they began to sway to the music. Emma had danced with Jack many times before, at college parties, at his sister's wedding 2 years ago, even in his apartment when he was trying to practice for a date, but something felt different tonight. "You smell nice," Jack said softly, breaking the silence between them. Emma looked up at him, surprised by the comment. "Thanks. It's that perfume you helped me pick out for my birthday." "Good choice on my part," he said with a grin. As they continued to dance, Emma became increasingly aware of Jack's hand on her waist, the slight pressure of his fingers, the warmth of his palm through the thin fabric of her dress. She noticed things she had never paid attention to before: the color of his eyes in the dim light, the slight stubble on his jaw, the way his lips curved when he smiled at her. The song ended, but another slow one began immediately. Neither of them made a move to leave the dance floor. "Do you remember when we first met?" Jack asked, pulling her a little closer. Emma nodded. "Library orientation. You sat next to me and kept asking questions that annoyed the librarian." "I only kept asking because it made you laugh," he admitted. "I liked your laugh." Emma felt a flutter in her stomach. "You never told me that." "There are a lot of things I've never told you," Jack said, his voice suddenly serious. The music swelled around them, and Emma found herself leaning closer to him, her hand moving from his shoulder to the back of his neck. Their bodies were touching now, moving together in perfect rhythm. She could feel his heart beating fast, or maybe it was her own. "Like what?" she whispered. Before he could answer, the song ended and the band announced they were taking a break. The spell was broken. They stepped apart, both looking slightly confused by what had just happened between them. "I need some air," Emma said, feeling flushed. "Want to step outside?" Jack nodded, and they made their way through the crowd to the hotel's garden terrace. The night air was cool against Emma's heated skin. They stood side by side at the stone railing, looking out at the city lights. "What's happening here, Jack?" Emma finally asked, turning to face him. He ran a hand through his hair, messing up its neat style. "I don't know. It's just, seeing Tom and Lisa get married today, watching how happy they are, it made me think about what I want." "And what do you want?" Emma's heart was racing now. Jack looked at her for a long moment. "Maybe something that's been right in front of me all along." He reached out slowly and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, his fingers lingering on her cheek. Emma closed her eyes at his touch, a shiver running through her that had nothing to do with the cool night air. "We should be careful," she whispered, even as she leaned into his touch. "We have 5 years of friendship at stake." "I know," Jack said, "but maybe there's more for us. Maybe there always has been." When Emma opened her eyes, Jack was looking at her in a way he never had before. The possibility of crossing this line, of changing everything between them, hung in the air like an unspoken promise. After years of dating other people, of telling each other their secrets, of being just friends, they stood at the edge of something new, something frightening and thrilling all at once. Neither of them moved. Neither of them broke the moment. And in that silence, everything between them began to change. The week after the wedding passed in a blur for Emma. She tried to focus on her work at the design agency, but her mind kept drifting back to that moment on the terrace with Jack. They had eventually returned to the reception, both pretending nothing had changed, but the air between them had been thick with unspoken words. Jack texted her on Friday afternoon, "Movie night at my place, like old times. I'll get the pizza." Emma stared at her phone, her heart beating faster. Their Friday movie nights were a tradition going back years. But would it feel the same now? Sure, she texted back. The usual time. When she arrived at Jack's apartment at 7, Emma had changed outfits 3 times, finally settling on jeans and a soft blue sweater that she knew brought out the color of her eyes. She had put on makeup, then wiped some of it off, not wanting to look like she was trying too hard. Jack opened the door with a smile that seemed a little nervous. Hey, you made it. Of course I did. It's tradition, Emma said, stepping inside. She caught a whiff of his cologne as she passed him, the same one he always wore, but somehow it seemed more noticeable tonight. His apartment looked the same as always: comfortable leather couch, movie posters on the walls, the collection of vinyl records he was so proud of. The pizza box sat on the coffee table alongside 2 beers. So, what are we watching? She asked, settling into her usual spot on the couch. Jack sat down beside her, closer than he normally would. I thought maybe that new romance thing you've been wanting to see, unless that's too. Too what? Emma looked at him. Too on the nose, I guess. Jack laughed nervously. Emma felt her cheeks warm. Maybe a little. They settled on an action movie instead, something with enough explosions and car chases to distract them both. But halfway through, Emma became aware that neither of them was really watching. Jack's arm had somehow found its way along the back of the couch behind her shoulders, not quite touching her but close enough that she could feel his warmth. Emma, Jack said softly, turning toward her as the movie's hero dangled from a helicopter. About the wedding. She looked at him, at the face she knew so well, the tiny scar above his eyebrow from when he fell off his bike at 12, the laugh lines around his eyes, the curve of his lips that she'd suddenly found herself thinking about all week. I can't stop thinking about it, she admitted. About you. His hand moved from the couch to her shoulder, thumb gently stroking the curve where her neck met her collarbone. I've been thinking about you for years, Emma, not just as a friend. Emma's breath caught. Why didn't you ever say anything? I was scared. You're the most important person in my life. The thought of messing that up. He shook his head. But when we danced at the wedding, I couldn't pretend anymore. Emma reached up and covered his hand with hers. I never let myself think about you that way. You were Jack, my best friend. Until suddenly you were just Jack. He leaned in slowly, giving her time to pull away. But Emma moved toward him instead, closing the distance between them. Their lips met in a soft, hesitant kiss that quickly deepened as years of unacknowledged feelings rushed to the surface. Jack's hands slid into her hair, cradling her head as though she were something precious. Emma moved closer, her hands on his chest, feeling his heart race beneath her palms. The kiss grew more intense, more hungry, until Emma pulled back, breathless. This changes everything, she whispered. Jack rested his forehead against hers. I know. Are you okay with that? Instead of answering, Emma kissed him again, sliding her hands up to his shoulders, then to the back of his neck. The movie played on, forgotten, as they lost themselves in each other. His hands moved slowly down her back, pulling her closer until she was nearly in his lap. When they finally broke apart, Jack's eyes were dark with desire. Maybe we should slow down, he suggested, though his hands continued to caress her back. Emma nodded, though every part of her wanted to keep going. You're right, we have a lot to figure out. Jack brushed her hair back from her face. We have time. All the time we need. As they settled back to watch the end of the movie, curled up together in a way they never had before, Emma realized that crossing this line with Jack didn't feel scary anymore. It felt like coming home to something that had been waiting for them all along. The credits rolled, but neither of them moved to turn off the TV. In the blue glow of the screen, they held each other, both understanding that they stood at the beginning of something new and wonderful, a transformation of friendship into something deeper, something that had perhaps been inevitable from the very start. 3 weeks passed, and Emma and Jack fell into a new rhythm together. Their friendship had transformed into something deeper yet familiar. They still had movie nights and went to their favorite coffee shop, but now Jack would hold her hand across the table, and Emma would steal kisses when no one was looking. On Friday evening, Jack called Emma. Hey, want to come over tomorrow? I'm thinking of making dinner instead of ordering in. You're going to cook? Emma laughed. This I have to see. Hey, I've been practicing. I want to do something special for you. The next evening, Emma knocked on Jack's door with butterflies in her stomach. Their relationship was still new, still taking shape, but she could feel it growing stronger each day. Jack opened the door wearing an apron over his button-down shirt. The smell of garlic and herbs filled the apartment. "Welcome to Chez Jack," he said with a grin, leaning down to kiss her. Emma stepped inside and noticed the transformation. Jack had cleared his usually cluttered dining table and set it with candles and wine glasses. Soft music played in the background. "Wow," Emma said, genuinely impressed. "You went all out." Jack looked a little shy. "I wanted tonight to be perfect." He led her to the kitchen where pots bubbled on the stove. "I'm making that pasta you love from Romano's. The waiter wouldn't give me the recipe, but I found something similar online." Emma stood behind him, wrapping her arms around his waist and resting her cheek against his back. "It smells amazing." They ate dinner with their knees touching under the small table, talking and laughing as they always had, but with a new layer of intimacy between them. Emma watched Jack's face in the candlelight, the way his eyes crinkled when he laughed, and felt a wave of emotion wash over her. "What?" Jack asked, noticing her stare. "I'm just happy," she said simply. After dinner, they moved to the couch with their wine glasses. Jack pulled Emma close, his arm around her shoulders. "I have something to tell you," he said. Emma tensed slightly. "That sounds serious." "It's good, I promise." Jack took a deep breath. "Remember that design firm in the city I interviewed with last month? They offered me the job." "Jack, that's amazing." Emma hugged him tightly. "That's your dream job." "I know." His smile was wide. "And it means I'll be moving closer to your neighborhood. No more crosstown commute to see each other." Emma felt a thrill at the thought of having Jack nearby. "When do you start?" 2 weeks, which means I need to find a place fast." He hesitated. "I was hoping you might help me look." "Of course. We can start tomorrow if you want." Jack set his wine glass down and turned to face her fully. "There's something else. These past few weeks with you. They've been the best of my life, Emma." Emma's heart raced as Jack took her hands in his. "Mine too," she whispered. "I know it's fast, but when something feels this right, why wait?" His eyes searched hers. "I love you, Emma. I think I have for years, but was too afraid to admit it, even to myself." The words hung in the air between them, powerful and transformative. Emma felt tears spring to her eyes. "I love you too, Jack. I think I realized it that night at the wedding, but it's been growing ever since." Jack pulled her into a deep kiss, his hands cupping her face with such tenderness that Emma felt her heart might burst. The kiss quickly grew more passionate as Emma moved closer, practically in Jack's lap now. His hands slid under her shirt, warm against her skin, and she gasped softly at his touch. "Emma," he murmured against her lips, "stay with me tonight." They had been taking things slowly, mindful of their friendship and the newness of their romantic relationship. But tonight, the last barriers between them seemed to dissolve. "Yes," she whispered. Jack stood, lifting Emma with him. She wrapped her legs around his waist as he carried her down the hallway to his bedroom, still kissing her as if he couldn't bear to stop. He laid her gently on his bed, looking down at her with such love and desire that Emma felt her whole body respond. "Are you sure?" he asked, his voice rough with emotion. Emma reached for him, pulling him down to her. "I've never been more sure of anything," she said. As clothes were slowly removed and new territories explored, Emma and Jack discovered each other in ways they never had before. Every touch, every kiss felt like both a revelation and a homecoming. Their bodies moved together with a natural rhythm, as if they had always been meant to be this way, this close, this connected. In the quiet darkness of Jack's bedroom, their friendship transformed completely into something beautiful and unbreakable, a love born from years of trust, laughter, and knowing each other's hearts. Jack's apartment hunting had turned into a joint project. Over the next 2 weeks, Emma spent most of her free time with him, visiting potential places and discussing the pros and cons of each neighborhood. They finally found a perfect one-bedroom just 10 minutes from Emma's place, with large windows and a small balcony that caught the morning sun. Moving day came quickly. Emma had taken the day off work to help Jack, and their mutual friends Tom and Lisa joined them. By late afternoon, most of the boxes were unpacked, and the apartment was starting to look like home. "That's the last of the kitchen stuff," Lisa said, folding up an empty box. She glanced at Tom. "We should probably head out. Early day tomorrow." After they left, Emma and Jack collapsed on his newly positioned couch, surrounded by the familiar furniture from his old place, now arranged in a new space that somehow felt like it belonged to both of them. "Thank you for all your help," Jack said, pulling Emma close and kissing her temple. "I couldn't have done this without you." "You could have," Emma replied, "but it wouldn't have been as much fun." Jack laughed and pulled her closer. "True. Everything's better with you." Later that evening, after they had ordered takeout and eaten it straight from the containers, they sat on the balcony with glasses of wine, looking out at the city lights. The night was warm, and a gentle breeze carried the scent of someone's flowers from a nearby balcony. "I've been thinking," Jack said, his voice casual though Emma could hear a slight nervousness beneath it. Emma looked at him, noticing how the city lights reflected in his eyes. "I know we've only been together for a little over a month," but he paused, taking her hand. "You already spend most nights here, and your commute to work from my place is actually shorter than from your apartment." Emma felt her heart start to race. "Jack, are you asking me to move in with you?" He nodded. "Is it too soon? I just got this place, so we could make it ours together from the start." Emma thought about her own apartment, how empty it had started to feel on the nights she didn't stay with Jack. "It's fast," she admitted, "but it also feels right." Jack's face broke into a wide smile. "Really? Really?" Emma leaned in to kiss him. "Let's do it." The kiss deepened quickly, Jack pulling Emma onto his lap, his hands sliding beneath her t-shirt to caress the soft skin of her back. They had made love many times over the past weeks, learning each other's bodies with the same care and attention they had always given to learning each other's minds and hearts. But tonight felt different, a celebration of another step forward together. "Let's break in the new place properly," Jack murmured against her neck, his lips hot on her skin. They moved inside, barely making it to the bedroom before clothes were being shed, hands reaching for each other with growing urgency. Emma pushed Jack back onto the bed, enjoying the look of surprise and desire on his face as she took control. She straddled him, her hair falling around her face as she leaned down to kiss him deeply. "I love you," she whispered against his lips. "I love that we're doing this together." Jack's hands slid up her sides, his touch gentle yet possessive. "I've dreamed about this, about us, for so long," he admitted. As they moved together, finding that perfect rhythm that had come so naturally to them from the start, Emma felt completely free. With Jack, there were no barriers, no need to hold back or pretend. They knew each other too well for games, but were still discovering new depths to their connection every day. Afterward, they lay tangled together on the sheets, the city lights still visible through the bedroom window. Jack traced lazy patterns on Emma's bare shoulder, his touch sending pleasant shivers through her. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. Emma smiled, nestling closer into his side. "About how this all started. One dance at a wedding, and everything changed." "Not everything," Jack said. "The foundation was always there. We just built something new on top of it." Emma thought about how true that was. Their friendship hadn't disappeared, it had transformed, deepened, becoming something even more beautiful and complete. The trust and knowledge of each other that had made them such good friends now made them passionate, connected lovers who could be fully themselves together. "You know what's strange?" Emma said, propping herself up on one elbow to look at Jack. "Nothing about this feels strange at all. It's like we were always heading here, just taking the scenic route." Jack smiled up at her, brushing her hair back from her face. "The best journeys usually do take the scenic route." 2 months passed quickly. Emma had moved most of her things into Jack's apartment, and they had settled into a comfortable routine together. They discovered the small joys of sharing a space, making coffee for each other in the morning, deciding together what to watch on TV, falling asleep in each other's arms every night. But not everything was perfect. Emma had noticed Jack seemed distracted lately, often checking his phone and having quiet conversations that ended when she entered the room. She tried not to worry, tried to trust in the solid foundation of their relationship, but doubts began to creep in. On Friday evening, Emma came home from work tired and looking forward to their usual movie night. She found Jack sitting on the couch, his expression serious. "Hey," she said, dropping her bag and kicking off her shoes. "Everything okay?" Jack patted the spot next to him. "We need to talk." Those 4 words sent a chill through Emma. She sat down slowly, keeping some distance between them. "What's going on? You've been acting strange all week." Jack took a deep breath. "I've been talking to my ex, Rachel." Emma felt her stomach drop. "Oh, it's not what you think," Jack said quickly, reaching for her hand. "She called because she's getting married, and she wanted to clear the air about some things from our past." "Why didn't you tell me?" Emma asked, hurt evident in her voice. Jack looked down. "I didn't want to upset you. I know our relationship is still new in some ways, and I didn't want to bring up the past." "I thought we promised to be honest with each other," Emma said. "No secrets." "You're right." Jack squeezed her hand. "I'm sorry. I should have told you." Emma remembered how their relationship had started, with complete openness and trust. Had they lost that somewhere along the way? "Is there something more?" she asked, sensing Jack wasn't telling her everything. Jack hesitated, then nodded. "She invited us to her engagement party next weekend. I told her I'd have to check with you first." Emma raised her eyebrows. "You want to go to your ex's engagement party? Together?" "Only if you're comfortable with it. We ended things years ago, and it would be nice to show her that we've both moved on. That we're happy." Jack stroked his thumb over her knuckles. "But if you'd rather not, I completely understand." Emma took a moment to think. Part of her wanted to say no, to keep their bubble intact. But she knew relationships needed to be tested to grow stronger. "Okay," she finally said. "Let's go, but no more secrets, Jack. Promise me." "I promise." He pulled her into his arms, holding her tight. No more secrets. The next weekend, they dressed up for the party. Emma wore a new blue dress that made her eyes shine, and Jack couldn't stop looking at her as they drove to the upscale restaurant where the party was being held. "You look beautiful," he said, taking her hand as they walked inside. The restaurant was filled with well-dressed people, soft music playing in the background. Emma felt a flutter of nervousness as Jack led her through the crowd, looking for his ex. "Jack, you made it." A tall, elegant woman with dark hair approached them, smiling warmly. She hugged Jack briefly, then turned to Emma. "You must be Emma. I've heard so much about you." "Rachel, this is Emma," Jack said, his voice proud. "Emma, this is Rachel. It's nice to meet you," Emma said, surprised by how genuine the words felt. Rachel smiled. "Come meet my fiancé, David." As they moved through the party, Jack kept his arm around Emma's waist, a constant reassuring presence. He introduced her to old friends, always with that note of pride in his voice that made her heart swell. Later, as they stood by the bar waiting for drinks, Rachel approached Emma alone. "I'm glad Jack found you," she said. "I've never seen him look at anyone the way he looks at you." Emma smiled. "Thank you for inviting us. It means a lot to him, to both of us, to have this closure." Rachel nodded. "We all need to move forward. Speaking of which," she leaned closer. "Has he shown you the ring yet?" Emma's heart stopped. "What ring?" Rachel's eyes widened. "Oh no, I'm so sorry. Forget I said anything." But it was too late. When Jack returned with their drinks, Emma pulled him to a quiet corner. "Rachel just mentioned a ring. What is she talking about, Jack?" Jack's face flushed. "I'm going to kill her," he muttered. Then he sighed deeply. "This is not how I planned this." Emma's heart raced as Jack set down their drinks and took both her hands in his. "I was going to ask you next week on our weekend trip to the coast. I've had the ring for 2 weeks now. You're going to propose?" Emma whispered, tears springing to her eyes. The coastal cottage was small but perfect, with weathered blue shutters and a deck that overlooked the ocean. Jack had booked it for their weekend getaway, a much-needed break from their busy lives in the city. Since Rachel's engagement party 2 weeks ago, there had been an expectant energy between them, both knowing what was coming but neither mentioning it directly. They arrived Friday evening as the sun was setting, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks. Emma stepped out onto the deck while Jack brought in their bags, breathing in the salty air and listening to the waves crash against the shore below. "What do you think?" Jack asked, coming to stand behind her. He wrapped his arms around her waist and rested his chin on her shoulder. "It's beautiful," Emma said, leaning back against him. Thank you for planning this. That night, they cooked dinner together in the small kitchen, moving around each other with the easy familiarity of people who had been sharing space much longer than they actually had. They ate on the deck, with candles flickering and the gentle breeze and the sound of the ocean as their background music. Remember that first time I cooked for you? Jack asked, refilling their wine glasses. Emma laughed. How could I forget? You were so nervous. I wanted everything to be perfect. Jack reached across the table for her hand, just like I do now. Emma felt her heart speed up, wondering if this was the moment. But Jack just smiled and squeezed her hand before turning the conversation to other things. The next day, they walked along the beach, collected shells, and had lunch at a small seafood restaurant in the nearby town. By late afternoon, they were back at the cottage. Jack suggested they get dressed up for dinner at a nice restaurant he had found, and Emma agreed, excited by the romantic possibilities of the evening ahead. She took her time getting ready, putting on the navy blue dress she had bought specially for this trip and the silver necklace Jack had given her for her birthday. When she emerged from the bathroom, she found Jack waiting on the deck, dressed in a crisp white shirt and dark pants, looking out at the ocean. You look amazing, he said when he turned and saw her. Emma smiled. So do you. Instead of heading to the car, Jack took her hand and led her to the railing of the deck. The sun was beginning to set again, the sky turning golden. I thought we could watch the sunset before we go, he said, his voice a little unsteady. Emma looked at him curiously. Are you okay? You seem nervous. Jack took a deep breath. I am nervous. I've been waiting for the perfect moment all day, and I realize there's never going to be a more perfect moment than right now, with you looking so beautiful, and the sun setting over the ocean. Emma's breath caught in her throat as Jack reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. He got down on one knee, looking up at her with so much love in his eyes that she felt tears forming in her own. Emma, loving you has been the easiest and most natural thing I've ever done. You've been my best friend for 5 years, and now you're the love of my life. I want to spend every day with you, talking, laughing, arguing, making up, growing old together. He opened the box to reveal a simple but beautiful diamond ring. Will you marry me? Emma's hands trembled as she reached for him. Yes, she whispered. Yes, of course I will. Jack slid the ring onto her finger, then stood and pulled her into his arms, kissing her deeply. Emma could taste the salt of her own happy tears on their lips. I love you so much, she said when they finally broke apart. Jack's eyes were suspiciously bright too. I love you more than I ever thought possible. They never made it to the restaurant. Instead, they stayed at the cottage, celebrating their engagement in the most intimate way. Jack led Emma to the bedroom, where he had scattered rose petals on the bed earlier when she wasn't looking. You were confident, Emma teased, seeing the romantic setup. Jack smiled, hopeful, not confident. Their lovemaking that night was slow and tender, filled with whispered promises for their future together. Jack's hands traced every curve of Emma's body as if memorizing her, though he already knew her by heart. Emma held him close, feeling the solid strength of him, the security of his love wrapped around her like a shield. Afterward, they lay tangled together, Emma's head on Jack's chest, her hand extended so they could both admire the ring sparkling in the moonlight that streamed through the window. When did you know? Emma asked softly. That you wanted to marry me. Jack's fingers traced lazy patterns on her bare shoulder. I think part of me always knew. But there was this moment about a month ago. We were just sitting on the couch, you were reading and I was watching TV. You looked up and smiled at me, and I suddenly couldn't imagine my life without that smile. Without you. He kissed the top of her head. When did you know you'd say yes? Emma smiled against his skin. That night at the wedding, when we danced. That's when everything changed for me. That's when I started to see what was possible between us. Jack pulled her closer. Outside, the waves continued their endless rhythm against the shore, a sound as constant and reassuring as the love they had found in each other. 1 year had passed since that magical weekend at the coastal cottage. Emma stood in the bridal suite of the beachfront hotel, looking at herself in the full-length mirror. Her white dress flowed around her like ocean waves, simple yet elegant, just as she had wanted. Through the window, she could see guests gathering on the beach where chairs had been set up facing the water. Lisa, her maid of honor, adjusted the small white flowers in Emma's hair. You look beautiful, she said, smiling at Emma in the mirror. Jack is going to cry when he sees you. Emma laughed softly. I'll probably cry too. There was a knock at the door, and Tom's voice called out, 5 minutes, ladies. Emma took a deep breath, feeling a mix of nerves and excitement. She and Jack had decided on a small ceremony with just their closest friends and family. The past year of planning had been full of decisions big and small, compromises and agreements, all leading to this moment. When it was time, Emma walked down to the beach where her father waited to escort her down the aisle. The sun was beginning to set, casting a golden glow over everything, just like it had when Jack proposed. Ready? Her father asked, offering his arm. Emma nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. The small string quartet began to play, and all the guests turned to watch as Emma and her father began their walk down the aisle that had been created in the sand. And there was Jack, waiting for her at the end, looking handsome in his light gray suit. Just as Lisa had predicted, his eyes filled with tears when he saw Emma. The look of love and wonder on his face made her own eyes fill as well. When her father placed her hand in Jack's, Jack squeezed it gently. You're breathtaking, he whispered for her ears only. The ceremony was simple and heartfelt. They had written their own vows, promising to be not only lovers but best friends, to support each other's dreams, to face life's challenges together, and to never take their love for granted. From the moment we danced at Tom and Lisa's wedding, something changed between us, Jack said, his voice strong and clear despite the emotion in his eyes. But looking back, I think my heart was always waiting for that moment, for us to finally see what was right in front of us all along. Emma's voice trembled as she spoke her vows. You've been my best friend, my confidant, my support through everything. Now you're my partner in all things. I promise to love you completely, to grow with you, and to always remember how precious what we have is. When they were pronounced husband and wife, Jack pulled Emma close for a kiss that made their guests cheer and whistle. Emma laughed against his lips, feeling a joy so complete, it seemed to fill every part of her. The reception was held in the hotel's oceanfront ballroom, with doors open wide to let in the sea breeze. They danced their first dance to the same song that had been playing when they realized their feelings for each other at Tom and Lisa's wedding, coming full circle. Later, as the night grew late and the celebration continued around them, Jack pulled Emma out onto the quiet terrace. The moon shone bright over the ocean, and the sound of the waves mixed with the music and laughter from inside. Happy? Jack asked, wrapping his arms around her waist. More than I ever thought possible, Emma replied, leaning back against his chest. Do you remember how nervous we were to cross that line from friends to something more? Jack laughed softly, his breath warm against her ear. Best risk I ever took. Mine too. Emma turned in his arms to face him. Thank you for dancing with me that night. Thank you for saying yes. Not just to marrying me, but to everything, to trying something new, to trusting me with your heart, to building a life together. Emma reached up to touch his face, tracing the features she knew so well and loved so deeply. I was thinking about that first night we spent together. How nervous we both were, how careful. Jack smiled, turning his head to kiss her palm. And now? And now I know you completely, Emma said. Your body, your heart, your mind. There are no boundaries between us anymore. As if to prove her point, she pulled him down for a deep, passionate kiss that held all the promise of the night to come. When they broke apart, they were both breathing hard, desire clear in their eyes. Should we say goodnight to our guests? Jack suggested, his voice rough. Emma smiled, a slow, knowing smile that sent heat coursing through Jack's body. I think they'll understand if the bride and groom want to start their honeymoon a little early. Hand in hand, they slipped away from their own reception, heading for the honeymoon suite that awaited them. As Jack closed the door behind them, Emma felt a sense of completion, of rightness. From friends to lovers to husband and wife, their journey had brought them here, to the beginning of a new chapter together. And as they fell into each other's arms, their bodies moving together with the practiced grace of lovers who knew each other well, Emma knew that they would keep discovering new territories together, keep crossing new boundaries, keep falling deeper in love, for all the days and nights to come.